come on. Come on, just that. That, yeah. Oh, come on. Flip that and do, wait. Let's just climb on here then. What is any good story without its villains? Well, today I'll be focusing my spotlight on a gaggle of characters that fit this archetype within the Pokémon franchise. Though, that part would be obvious, as I mentioned them in the title. What you're all really wondering is what could this big mystery be that surrounds them? Well, while doing my research, I stumbled across a detail that while some villains have clarified, others have left blanked out, removing an absolutely critical piece of character information from their bios. That being, where are those villains' hometowns located? Greetings one and all. Today for this theory, I'll be pulling information from the games and wikis to determine which town each villain could have been raised in, or potentially now occupy. To start, we can use the wikis to easily see where other characters' hometowns are located. For example, Professor Oak lives in Pallet Town, Barry is from Twinleaf, and Nimona resides in Cabo Poco. However, as I will now show, a majority of the villains are left empty. We only know the homes of Giovanni, Cyrus, and Lucamine. As for the rest, this field is simply left as unknown. Until today, as I plan to answer the matter once and for all. Well, certainly for two of those characters, at least, which I'll explain why towards the end of the video. Now then, Archie and Maxie, the leaders of Team Aqua and Team Magma respectively, who act as the main antagonists for the Hoenn games. Very little is known about the duo, apart from their goals of awakening legendary Pokémon to reform the world in their own radical, ecological images. To begin, how do we even go about finding any clues on where they could possibly live? Well, if there is at least one common truth that I know of in the Pokémon series, it is that there will always be someone out there stopping you from leaving your hometown without a Pokémon alongside you. Unless you're Barry. But let's be honest, he learned very quickly why there are people there, stopping scatterbrained residents from running off. So even if you don't intend on challenging the gyms or taking part in contests, it is easy to understand that most everyone needs a partner by their side to help them adventure across the wilds. With this in mind, we need to find out, and I hope you guessed it, what would Archie and Maxie's starter Pokémon be? As once they have attained them, so can they then leave their homes and start their journey on destroying the environment. The method I'll be using to determine which Pokémon from their teams is their starter will be pretty simple. By using Barry once again, since with not only him, but the rest of our rivals, we can see a trend on how people starting their journeys go about building their teams. Every rival has their starter Pokémon as their highest level creature on their team across their adventure. Nimona could be an exception, as she mentions having a team before taking one of the Paldean trios, but until we see what her level for her original Pokémon was, I feel I can say that this method still works. But Ulmo, I hear you cry. How would they even get their starters? Would Professor Birch have given them their Pokémon? Well, no. I don't believe that either team leader would have acquired their Pokémon from the Professor. Luckily though, the Hoenn games actually give us a different view on how trainers could receive their first Pokémon. In Petalburg City, the protagonist meets a young trainer called Wally, who, like them, is heading out from their hometown and in need of a Pokémon to take on his travels. But Professor Birch lives at least 2 routes and 1 city away. It'd be too risky for him to travel that far all alone. Well, luckily, the Petalburg Gym seems to run a program to help trainers looking to find their first Pokémon. After talking to the gym leader and borrowing his Zigzagoon, Wally, with the protagonist's assistance, finds and captures a Pokémon in the next route over. That Pokémon being Routes, who stays on Wally's team throughout the game as his highest level Pokémon. Using this information, now all we do is work backwards. First, we find out what each leader's highest Pokémon is at the time when we initially encounter them. From there, we observe where that Pokémon is, or its pre-evolutions can be captured. Then finally, find a town or a city next to that discovered area with an operating gym. With all that set up, let's begin with Team Magma's leader, Maxie. When we first battle Maxie, he comes at us with a team of 3. His lead, Mightyena, followed by a Zubat or Golbat depending on the game, and lastly, his strongest Pokémon, and by my method, his starter, Camerupt. In the Hoenn games, the only way we can acquire a Camerupt is via a Magma Grunt at the Battle Resort, though this is only possible in the remakes. Instead, we are going with the more likely option of Maxie starting his journey with the pre-evolved form, Numel. The originals and the remakes have Numels roaming in only 3 spots, those being Route 112, Fiery Path, and Jagged Pass, all of which happen to be located nearby one particular place. Laveridge Town. The popular spot, known for its delightful hot springs, is where I believe Maxie to have started his journey. Not only does this town connect directly to both Route 112 and Jagged Pass, but it also has its own gym. And while I can't see Flannery being the person to have lent out a Pokémon to a younger Maxie, it could have easily been done by her predecessor in the past. However, I do have one more reason why I believe that Laveridge Town could be Maxie's home. While only found in Pokémon Emerald, we see Team Magma burrow into the side of the volcano north of the gym. Within these walls, do we find Team Magma forming their own hideout. Now, while this could be some major speculation on my part, I would guess that Maxie knew about this spot as a younger man, or even as a child, then in the future brought in his team to carve away at the rocks and build his base. I say this as someone who at a younger age lived by a large forest, in which my friends and I grew up to know like the back of our hands. We even built our own little secret bases, just like the ones found in the Hoenn games. Moving on to Team Aqua's leader Archie. Similarly to Maxie, his team is almost identical when we first battle him. The only difference is that instead of a Camerupt, his strongest Pokémon is instead a Sharpedo. To keep things fair between both leaders, I'll be saying that like Maxie, Archie would have left his hometown with his aces, pre-evolution Carvana. Like Numel, Carvana's encounters location stay the same throughout all the Hoenn games, being found on both Route 118 and Route 119. Now each route has its own connection to a city, with Route 118 being connected to Marvile City, while 119 is alongside Fortree City. As both locations have working gyms, we'll have to find another reason to decide where Archie came from. Funnily enough, the only way to capture a Carvana on both these routes is by using either the Good Rod or the Super Rod, and it just so happens that on Route 118, a helpful fisherman happily awaits to hand out the Good Rod to passerbyers. So in my opinion, with the assistance from the Marvile Gym and the fisherman, I believe that Archie gained his Carvana by fishing alongside the beaches of his hometown in Marvile City. Who knows? Maybe staring out at the large boulders blocking his access to the ocean fueled the hatred for the land and started his dream to one day filling the earth with water, so that no longer can pesky boulders block his path to the sea. Though, now I am reaching. So, there we have it. The longest lasting question throughout the Pokémon series that I know everyone here was very interested in finding the answers for. Maxie was brought up in Laveridge Town, and Archie grew up in Marvile City. So, let's just edit these wiki pages with the correct information. Go on, shoo you little unknowns. And it was all thanks to Wally. But let's see what happens when this method is applied to the other villains with unknown hometowns. Starting with Getsis, in his first appearance in Pokemon Black and White, by looking at his team, we can see that his strongest Pokemon is his Hydreigon. As it can only be attained via evolution, we will instead be looking to where we can encounter it as a Dino. In Unova, the only location where Dino can be encountered is via Victory Road. Now this location isn't connected to any towns or cities, only Route 10 or the Unova Pokemon League. However, hidden within the Pokemon League is End's Castle, the described base for Team Plasma. It is here where Getsis raised his adopted son, N. The structure found buried underneath the League is where I think he originally started building his team. As for who assisted Getsis, well, maybe it was one of the sages who just happened to come along with him into Victory Road. Is what I would say if Getsis clearly wasn't a cheater that somehow hacked himself a level 54 Hydreigon, a whole 10 levels lower than when its pre-evolution would actually evolve into that stage. Rose from the Galar region could have gotten his Q font within locations found in both the northern and southern sections of the wild area. Now, this area can be travelled to by walking via Mottostoke, or by travelling across the rail leading to many other towns such as Wedgehurst, Hammerlock, or Winden. That at this time, I can't find any way to narrow down the information that I do have any further to determine where he could reside from originally. Moving on to Lysander, who at one point I thought would have me looking all over Kalos for Pyroars, until I remembered that his Gyarados is his strongest Pokemon. Which makes sense, because Lysander is such a flop of a character that he would start with a Magikarp. Now the only place where he could acquire the red fish that matches his hair would be on Route 3, 22, and at the Palace. As both Route 3 and 22 are connected to Santaloon City, which also has its own functioning gym, do I feel that he would have started here, but probably later moved to Lumio City to match the larger-than-life buildings with his big ego. As for the villains with noted hometowns, Lusamine has the issue where not only does her team share the same levels, but also while residing on the Aether Paradise, the only way she could make her team would be with the rescued Pokemon running around inside. Also, just because it's stated as her hometown on the wiki, it's most likely not where she grew up, at least as far as I could tell, as she is noted as Aether's president and not its founder. I cannot say for sure if she may have been born there while, let's say, her parents ran the organization, or if she started somewhere else and moved to the artificial island at a later point. Because of this, the Wally method cannot be applied to her. Giovanni as well is messy when it comes to the Wally method, as his team changes quite a bit throughout the different games, and apart from the Nidos on his team, the rest cannot be found anywhere close to Viridian City. In fact, most of his team can be found within the Safari Zone in Fuchsia City, most likely pointing to the fact that Team Rocket steals their Pokemon, and this is a sort of nod to him possibly poaching his Pokemon at an earlier time in his life. Maybe he started in Fuchsia City, but later moved to Viridian to help build up his cover from crime as a gym leader. Lastly, for the villains, we have the one who ruined this method completely. Cyrus is from Sunyshore City, which is stated on the wiki to not only be where he was born, but where he also grew up living. While this place does have an operating gym, it doesn't connect to any route where his highest level team member can be encountered, those Pokemon being either his Sneasel in Diamond, Pearl and the remakes, or in Platinum is Murkrow. Either way, as I mentioned, neither Pokemon can be found anywhere close to Sunyshore City, so the Wally method doesn't match up for Cyrus in the slightest. But maybe there is something we overlooked, as I feel that the Wally method works best for the villains which come from the same region as, well, Wally. I could make the argument that the Hoenn region, and more importantly, the Hoenn Pokemon League, has set up their own system so that if trainers are unable to find any establishment giving away starter Pokemon, that the Hoenn League gyms have the obligation to help people capture their first team members as a part of their jobs, as we never see it again in any other region. We know that different regions' leagues can operate differently. As we see in Alola, instead of battling gym leaders, the trainer must complete a set of trials before they can challenge the Elite Four and gain the title as champion. We know that for different locations, the professors can even deliver or ship out Pokemon to new trainers who live outside of where the professor operates. We see this in Sinnoh, Unova, and even Kalos. So these regions wouldn't need any additional procedures to hand over first-time Pokemon to new trainers, while we also know that the Paldea region, trainers receive their Pokemon from the Academy, but also in other ways. As once again, Nemona tells us that she had Pokemon before she started her studies. How she came to get these Pokemon though, we simply don't know. Nonetheless, one thing we know for certain is that in the Hoenn games, we see how 3 trainers start their journeys. 2 would be gifted their Pokemon by a local professor in their town, while the last one would head to his local gym, borrow a Pokemon, and capture his starter within the next route over. And if that is how it was done for him in Hoenn, why couldn't the same be done for the leaders of Aqua and Magma? Thus, reaching my conclusion on where Archie and Maxie live, those being in Marval City and Lava Ridge Town, respectively. Thank you for watching the video. It was a little bit more far-fetched than my last discussion, but I certainly had fun looking into it. Anyway, if you had made it this far, then I hope that you found my mad ramblings amusing. If you did, please leave a like. If you didn't, then under your seats I have left bowls of rotting fruit, which you may throw at me as the lights begin to fade. Until next time, I hope you enjoyed the show. Ow. Hey, stop. Ow. 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 Stop. Ow. Sorry. Ow. Stop it. Oh, mother of melons.